Welcome to Simply the Truth with me, Doug Harris. Thank you for joining us because, as we often say, and we always mean, you are more important than those of us that are here in the studio. We take things which sometimes are difficult to handle, sometimes things which are difficult to understand. We take them and we communicate the truth as simply as possible. And that's certainly one thing that we want to do today with my guest, who is no stranger if you've watched Simply in the Truth in the past, Dave Brown. Hi, Dave.
Afternoon, Doug.
Yeah, great. You've made it. You made it much easier this way. You took the right road this time.
Well, you sort of get directions and they lead you the wrong way. But we took the right directions this
and you
time,
made
yeah.
it.
We did, yeah. We left 2 hours later and we got here 2 hours earlier. Bit like Concorde. Amazing.
Great. Dave, as you may well remember, is a former Jehovah's Witness, and we're going to be dealing with some specific aspects today of that. But, I mean, what we were talking about there, about being on the right road, I think is so important because, there are spiritual dimensions to that. There's a spiritual lesson to that we really do have to be on the right road. If we are going to arrive at our destination in time and in a good way, we've got to go the right way. Otherwise, if we're going the wrong way, we get all frustrated and everything else. And I think there's another lesson there, and that is this. There's no way that we can know which way to go unless we know where we want to get to. So we need to know what do I want to be my final destination? Do I want life with the Lord in His way, in His future? If I do, then I've got to take the right road. And so I think there's some real lessons there for us, and we will be discussing some of those with Dave in just a minute. Can I say right at the outset, if you want to make response to this program, maybe you're a Jehovah's Witness and you'll be sitting there saying, I just don't agree with what's being said, you can make a clear response to us on our website at Revelation TV, Simply the Truth, Revelation TV. If you go on to the front page of revelationtv.com, you'll find a link. There's the actual HTTP. I sound so clever when I say that, don't I? But that you can go to, but there will be a link. If you go to a quick link through to Simply the Truth page, you can leave a message, and I can assure you, maybe not immediately, but certainly within a reasonable space of time, you will receive an answer, and that message will be left up for all to see. So if you disagree with what's being said, in a nice way, please don't use all nasty words and, really having a go, because we'll have to rephrase the email before we put it up. But you can leave a message there, and we will gladly post it up with whatever you want to say on it, and others can join in. Dave, as I say, it is great to see you again. Pleasure. And in past programs, last year and this year, we've shared about your life as a witness, and we've got your testimony running. So I don't want to go into that specifically in this program, but if people need to know that, it's available.
Yep.
How does your life now compare with what it was like? Just give us an overview of now of leaving the Watchtower Society and now joining a Baptist church and being involved. What are the main differences in your life?
It is 180% completely different. My life now is free. I'm free to read the Bible for myself. I'm free to take in other scholars' information and make a choice on my own. I'm free to contact Jesus Christ directly and not through an organization. And in physical terms, in spiritual terms, there's no comparison at all. I am an absolute, I really do feel the light and the power of Jesus Christ in my life, and it's magnificent. Physically and mentally, solid as a rock. I suffered tremendously from the pressure of being a Jehovah's Witness. I suffered terribly from the constant bickering, the constant examination of you, the constant listening to your expressions to sense whether or not you were looking at the wrong things.
Even what you said, it was the way you said it. Yeah.
I was even trained to do that.
Yes.
You know, I mean, I used to sneak around people and listen to what they were saying, listen to the responses they gave in the Watchtower study, and pick up, because you can pick up. If people aren't within this narrow funnel of doctrine, you'll pick it up. And certainly they were doing that to me. They would do. I mean, I'd go up and do a talk, and a couple of days later, someone would come along and say, "I feel stumbled, brother." And you don't want to hear that, because that can result in some misery, to be honest, for you, for stumbling them. Where'd you get it from? And you say, with the Bible. Well, it doesn't say that in the Watchtower. And to actually tread that narrow line, it's like walking along the edge of a razor blade. It hurts.
I mean, I think we should say right at the outset, because we've said it in other programs, of course, that although you sense that difference and you feel that difference now.
Absolutely.
You don't have hatred towards bitterness. And, and we're not communicating hatred today. We're not communicating those things. Yeah. And you, of course, have tried to reach out and back to those that are there. And so we want to make that absolutely clear, right? But you do feel, and I guess, without putting words into your mouth, and come back to me, that what you would like to happen today is that people would at least be honest enough to listen to what you're saying and going away and checking it out.
Yes. I mean, my argument is not with ordinary brothers and sisters. My argument is with a governing body that dictate. And they dictate what you can read and what you can say and what you can listen to. And they dictate that on the basis that you do as you're told, or you'll be thrown out. And it's as simple as that. Now, you must understand then the situation that witnesses believe that they're in. As a witness, I believed that the destruction of this world and the removal of Gog's crowd, the ungodly, could occur imminently without warning. That could happen now. That's what I believed.
So you said Gogs, not gods.
No,
I mean, in other words, you're talking about the Ezekiel prophecy, Gog and Magog, and they look upon Gog as being the unworldly bunch.
Anything other than a witness. If you're not a witness, you're part of Gog's crowd.
Okay.
So that is one of the reasons why I became a witness, is I didn't want to be destroyed by maggots and choke on maggots. Right. I also was attracted to the paradise earth, because that was the option available to me, was the paradise earth. Not heaven, but the paradise earth. So, if you're removed and you're no longer a Jehovah's Witness, you could die instantly. And that is the threat. And when people talk about being removed from Jehovah's Witnesses, it is a death sentence. It's a pogrom. And they talk about people. I mean, I've heard elders. I mean, I remember having a conversation with an elder about his daughters. And now, I'd been speaking to someone previously, and they said, "Oh, nice chap, and got a couple of nice girls, nice daughters as well, very friendly." And I went over and spoke to him sometime later and said, "Oh, your daughters are okay." He said, "No, they're dead." And I thought I'd been set up.
Right.
I said, "Well, I'm awful sorry. They're dead. They're dead. I'm so sorry." And I went back and told to the person. I said, "Well, hang on a minute, no, they're not dead, but they're dead." "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, they're alive, but they're dead. They're not part of Jehovah's organization, so they're dead. End of. If they ever come back, or if they apply to come back, well, then we'll see. But currently, they're dead."
Well, of course, we're actually beginning to talk about the subject we want to deal with today, and that's the whole area of disfellowshipping that the Jehovah's Witness has. And of course, what you're describing is somebody, and I want to talk a little bit more about this, because, and I think it's clearly written within their books as to what happened. So we're not misrepresenting anything here today. Yeah. And as you say, that conversation you actually had with a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah. And here they were, they had family, they had two daughters. Those daughters had decided of their own free will to leave the Watchtower Society. Yeah. And he looked upon them as dead. Did he totally treat them as dead? Did he not speak to them? Did he not have anything to do with them? I mean, did it really mean that?
As far as I was aware, it was the only way he could cope with the situation. Of course he loved his daughters. Of course he wanted to communicate with them. But he was an elder. He was involved in bits and pieces outside of the congregation. He was well known on the circuit for speaking, and a well-respected man. And that has to come first. And if dealing with his daughters was to become known to certain people, they would go along and say, well, I'm stumbled. I'm stumbled by that. And it would cause him problems in areas where he wanted to be teaching. So the only way that he could cope with the situation that he was in was to consider them dead, as in dead. There was no way around it. They had to be considered dead.
From your experience in the organisation up until that point, and from all the teaching you had in the Watchtower, is that the teaching of the organisation, or did that person take it too far?
No, he didn't take it too far, because that's what they tell you to do. Treat this fellowship, brothers and sisters, as they are dead. I mean, it really is not a biblical thing that they've done. They take verses and they take them beyond the nth degree. And a lot of the people that are disfellowshipped over feuds that are going on within a congregation. I was once involved, and it's appalling to even admit to it. But I was once involved in the removal of an innocent person from a congregation myself, and I gave false witness. And it kills me today to even think about it, because the consequences were horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But at the time I was reaching out to be a ministerial servant. You do tend to do as you're told. You do want to score a few brownie points if you can. And he seemed a trustworthy type of chap. And he said, well, all I need you to say is this. We haven't got two witnesses that saw the event, but we'll put together the two witnesses if you say you saw something similar. So you're not really lying. But don't forget, if it's for the good of God, Abraham lied, didn't he, to Pharaoh? So we can lie, as long as it's on the terms that Abraham did. So anyway, that's what I did. The man was disfellowshipped, and it was horrendous. And of course, I felt really, really bad for weeks. And I went up to this particular chap, and he didn't want anything to do with me. No. Didn't want to know me. Thank you very much. And one of the other elders came over and said, well, now you've met the smiling knife. And now you know what he is, and now you know how to keep him.
Right.
Amazing.
Just before we go on, Dave, let me say, and I've made this offer umpteen times before, but I will make it again. I would love to have Jehovah's Witness come here and sit and answer some pre-arranged questions with Dave or somebody else as well, to really answer some of these things, because this is, even clearly just from reading the Watchtower, this is the teaching that is there. We would love for you to come on and to do that. The seat's available. Just make contact with me at Revelation TV. Love for you to come on, because we don't want to misrepresent. We don't want in any way to make things worse than they are, but we are concerned that the truth is there. We are concerned that reality comes into people's lives and they understand. You want to? The seat's here. It's open, and we'd love to have you on. Dave, before you left the Witnesses, and before you even considered leaving the Witnesses, and say that those issues we've looked at before, did you ever face the issue that you might have to treat your children or your wife or any of your close family in the same way? Did you ever sit down and think about that?
It's a terrifying thought, and you hope that it'll never occur. But within the close-knit family of a Jehovah's Witness congregation, any disfellowshipping is frightening. But I'd qualify that, though, you see, because it depends on the type of witness that you are. If you've been born into that organisation, you're a different sort of animal, right, to somebody that's been recruited in, like myself.
Right.
There really is an us and them. And the us deal with issues far more tenderly and far more confidentially than they do with the likes of me, the them. I was told the day after I was baptised, about time you got yourself out the gutter. You were pretty, you cut it close, but you're out the gutter now. But it was always that, there's this little clicky thing about it. But disfellowship, you see, another experience. the first congregation I went to was the actual congregation that was the core one in Cardiff. It had been there for 80, 90 years, I believe. It was very elderly and calm, and it just followed scriptures through. They were shocked with 1975, but they were there for Jehovah. They weren't there for the men.
You mentioned it. Just remind us about 1975. Because
My understanding of 1975 is that in the fall or autumn of 1975, they had calculated that was it, Armageddon was going to come. It was in a long line of predictions, but this was definitely it. They say they never said it, but there's 6 years' worth of record that shows that they did. And many, many people sold their homes, they packed their jobs in, and they spent the year prior to that in a final push for God to get as many people out of what they call the system into Jehovah's organization. And it didn't happen. And these people have hung on with gritted teeth. So we're back to this congregation where they're all pretty well old. There's about 45 of them. And a CO called, circuit overseer. Now, he's a visiting sort of bishop, I would call him. And he comes to the congregation once every 6 months. He spends a week there encouraging. And when you're a servant or an elder, he'll spend time with you and encourage you in your walk. At the time, I was a ministerial servant, so I went to the first half of the meeting, but then his elders only. About 3 or 4 days later, a very, very good friend of mine, he came up to me, and he was in tears. And he was the presiding overseer of that congregation. And he said, Dave, I don't know what to say to you. And I said, well, I don't know, what is the problem? He said, the CO has pointed out to us there hasn't been a disfellowshipping in his congregation in the last 18 years. He wants to have one before he next calls in 6 months, and there's only one candidate. You. Because we can't get rid of these, they're 80, 90, you know. How can you prove anything against them? You're fresh in. You've been here 3, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. The only candidate we got is you, but I can promise you, if we do have to put you out, we'll have you back in as quickly as we can. And I said, why? He said, because you know and I know it's a G-up and it's a strike of fear to put the congregation back on its toes.
So, you've mentioned the word fear.
Yes.
Is that something which hangs over the head of many witnesses? I can understand that different people will take it in different way, and therefore some will take it one way, some will take it the other. But it does seem that if as you've said, disfellowshipping means leaving everything, losing everything, you have no hope, that must be a fear that, you know, it's going to be you.
Yeah.
And are you aware that witnesses walk in fear?
Yes.
Of that type of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, in the second congregation I went to, there are at least 4 disfellowshippings a year. They follow the principle that does keep people on their toes, and they'll find anything. And I mean, I heard of one person that they couldn't find any sin in the judicial committee. We can come to that. But he was arrogant, and so they were put him out for that. In other words, he said, you ain't got nothing on me, boys. Well, okay, we'll disfellowship you for the disrect you've shown to the elders in the committee. Yes, they do. And I mean, one of the things the elders do, and I didn't know about it until I became appointed myself as a ministerial servant, because, I mean, ordinary brothers that go to a kingdom hall, they don't realize that they're not considered a brother unless they're appointed. If they're a ministerial servant or they're an elder, then they're considered to be a brother. If not, they're just part of the congregation. So they don't know really half what's going on in the background. But I didn't know the sort of the disrespect that they had. And one of the games they would play is they would call an emergency elders meeting at the end of the Watchtower study on a Sunday. And everybody would think the same. Oh, please, God, don't let it be me they're talking about. Don't let it be me. And you would go home and you would wait for the phone call. And nothing would happen. Psychological torture. And I didn't know they did that on purpose until I became involved in doing it myself.
Right. Now, we've talked about the biblical side, and in the Bible, quite clearly, there is discipline within the church.
Yes.
And quite clearly, there's at least one clear instance, but there are other references, where Paul clearly says to them, have nothing to do with this man.
Correct.
Now, that is therefore clearly there biblically. That is, I mean, maybe should it not be that the church is doing this more often and the witnesses are doing what's right and the church is probably not doing quite as much as they should do? How do you read that?
Well, from my experience of the church that I'm in, I would say that there may be some grounds in saying that. But Paul doesn't say take him outside and kill him.
Yeah, right.
Because that's what they're deciding to do.
Yes.
I've got no doubt in my mind at all. I mean, they talk about the Catholic pogroms, the witness pogrom exactly the same. Because at the point they make the decision, it is a decision of death. They're killing the man. They're putting him outside to die because they don't know. If they honestly believe that Armageddon's imminent, it can happen tomorrow or today, any second, and that man is off the ark, that man is going to die. And they make a decision as judges, they call themselves judges, they make a decision and it's a death sentence. So, I understand what Paul's got to say, but a lot of it is really fellowshipping as well. Yes. Do not eat with such a man.
Yes.
But where does love your enemy come into it then?
Yeah, right.
If he's become an enemy, well then show him extra love. We don't want to lose a single human. Jesus died for all men. What right is a human to say, well, you don't count. You're out, mate.
Is that what you feel is really the heart of the problem on this whole area of disfellowshipping? I.e., it's not so much just the disciplining, because yes, there should be the right disciplining. And if somebody, I guess, let me share from my experience. I mean, I've been in Christian work for 40 odd years. I've been in leadership for quite most of those years. Only twice have we ever had to come to a situation where publicly we say, thus and thus brother is living in sin, he will not repent, therefore have nothing to do with him. We will allow him to come to the meetings because we want him to restore, but he's not to take any public part and we're not to talk to them. And only twice in 40 odd years has that actually happened. And maybe, so that does happen. Is your contention the problem with what the Watch shows out is they've taken it a step further, because they haven't just disciplined them to protect the congregation, they haven't just disciplined them to seek to bring that one to repentance. They've actually said, you've had it.
Correct.
And that is the problem. It is, and you've used this 2 or 3 times, which sounds quite strong, but maybe they've passed the death sentence. Correct. Now, that sounds quite strong to us, but is that how people felt when they come? Yeah,
absolutely. You see, and this is why, the figure for last year is 70,000 people disfellowshipped.
How many?
70,000. They would expect that 1 out of 3 will apply to come back. Well, what happens to the other 2? You'll find, with your experience, you'll probably agree, you'll find that the majority say, well, if that's God, I don't want anything to do with it. Thank you very much. I can't cope with this. Because you see, if it was based on the reasons that Peter gave in the Bible, then fair enough. But you help the man. The man comes to the elders. One of the first things they say is in the scriptures is if you see a man take a full step, go and help him. Not write it in the ledger for later in the week. That's one. Because you see, another term that I heard, Rudy Giuliani put the streets of New York right on the basis of all the drug dealers and all the rest of it that was going on the streets of New York in those days with a 3 strikes and you're out policy. Well, I was in a congregation where it was 3 strikes and you were out. Where's that in the Bible? And they make a show of it. Well, you have 2 strikes. Well, I beg your pardon. No, it's beyond all belief. I've had a situation where a very, very good friend of mine never knew really what was going on, but all of a sudden it's announced in the congregation in this particular day, it still was so-and-so, so-and-so has been disfellowshipped. Nowadays, it's so-and-so, so-and-so is no longer a Jehovah's Witness. Because people like me, that, I mean, they were not, they didn't have a clue, really. I mean, they could tell that I was doing things a little bit different, but they never had a clue to even reprove me or suspect me. And so when I handed in my resignation letter and said, I've had enough of this, boys, and went, it was, I mean, it really took them by surprise. They couldn't see that coming. That left me in a black hole for a while, which I made you aware of. But no, I mean, and this particular character, it was pretty confidential. The announcement's made. Everybody stay away from him. Well, I wanted to find out. And I said, well, what is it? What have you been done for? And he said, not paying my taxes. I said, but you're employed. Yeah, but I didn't have a TV license. I didn't have a TV license, and I couldn't afford a TV license. He said, and the problem with it was, I'd gone 2 months without a TV license, and all I said was, what do you expect me to do? And they said, well, you call that repentance? He said, well, what do you want? What do you want from me? I can't turn the clock back. Disfellowshipped him. Incredible.
So there's two things here. Is one is the amount that's done and what is done, and the other is why it is done for.
Yes.
And I think as we're talking about this, we are once again saying that there needs to be discipline within the church. But how, and as it were, quote, the punishment needs to be according to the crime, as it were, which it doesn't seem in a case like that. No. It really is.
That's right.
How, since you... Well, no, let me ask you another question first of all. You talked about handing in your resignation letter.
Yes.
Now, did they still disfellowship you after that, or is there something else that, do they accept resignation and just say that? How does that work out?
Well, first and foremost, they don't like that, because if you're going, it's because they've put you out. There's been a major change. I think it's probably to do with people being sued for slander. They don't get up and say disfellowshipping anymore. They use a catch-all. They would have got up in the front of the congregation and said, Brother David Brown is no longer a Jehovah's Witness. Right. No reason given, and off they go. But, the bottom line was, once the resignation letter had gone in, mine and Lynn's together, after a battle to get them to accept it, I hand-delivered it and made them read the thing through. I kept on doing it, and it kept coming back. Not acceptable. Can't send that to the society. That's not acceptable. And by the way, we need to discuss.
Yes.
Because they don't like it. I mean, what I've caused. I mean, when you talk about causing a stink, I've caused a stink by doing that. Because they've got no control over it. They've got no control over me, and they don't like it. They've had me in a vice for so long. I've been on the inside, and I've seen things that they don't want people to know about. And all of a sudden, voila, I'm out of there. And we got real problems here, boys. But no, so in simple terms. In the end, we got him to accept. I stood in front of the elder and said, I'm staying here until you say that's okay. Yes. And then that's what he did. He read it through. And he said, well, okay, we'll go through the normal procedure. We'll give you a 7-day cooling off period before we read it, before we announce it to the congregation. And I said, well, there's absolutely no point. And I prefer you do it straight away. Because I want brothers and sisters to know where they stand with me. And that was how that was done. But there has been little follow-ups. But really speaking, they know me, and they know that when I was involved with Jehovah's Witnesses, I was into it 100%. Reservations, terrible reservations, but a choice has been made, and it's got to be dealt with correctly. And so they know once I make my mind up, my mind is made up, and they will not turn my mind. And so they did for a while, but they left it.
And you resigned.
Yes.
So out of your own free will,
yes, you
decided,
yes,
and whether they see it rightly or wrongly, it's not, you decided you wanted to leave the Watchtower Society. So you hand in your letter of resignation. Are you treated the same as somebody that didn't particularly want to leave but was disfellowshipped and put out? Are you treated the same?
Absolutely.
So people stop talking to you?
Yes.
People walk past you in the street,
yes,
and never had anything to you. What happened to your family?
The family that I've got that are in the witnesses are my son, Jason. And it's difficult to sort of talk anything about it because you never know who's watching. And one of the things that they always do is if they can use a member of your family to get to you, that's what they'll do. So it's fair to say that I have got tremendous difficulties with keeping my son's situation secure in regard to what he wants to do.
He's still in the witnesses.
Yes, he's engaged
yes.
to a witness girl.
Yes.
And he wants to marry her. And that's all he really wants, is to marry her. But of course, he's got his own life, and I really, really can't say a lot more about it than that.
No, fine.
But the pressure that boy is under is incredible. We work together, we built a business together, and they don't want him doing that. And he lives at home, and they don't want him doing that. I think I make it much worse because I'm vociferous about it. I mean, most witnesses are so shattered by the experience and so ashamed that they couldn't meet God's requirements. And they've been thrown out and thrown off the ark. And they just go home and they sit in the corner and they just tremble and, they're afraid to come out. Well, me, I'm a different kettle of fish. I left on my own terms, and I will tell people what goes on. I mean, within the fellowship that I'm part of, they can't believe a word I say because they think it's just a more radical Christian branch. They don't realize the sort of stuff that goes on. I talk about not having a relationship with Jesus, and they say, well, don't be daft. Of course you did. They just don't understand. I mean, I was saying at the house group last night, I mean, we've had our ups and downs, big style, because I make stands that you don't even understand, I mean, we've had a situation there with signing a book. Well, to a Jehovah's Witness, or someone that's come out of there, that spent 18 years in a vice, do they honestly think I'm going to sign a book? I got away from that type of behaviour.
So, I mean, what you're saying was, in the witnesses, as honest and sincere as you and many, many others in the congregation are,
yes,
you saw that then as an outward commitment. In other words, it was an outward commitment to an organisation. It was working, yes, for Jehovah, but through his organisation. What you see now is your life is an inward one, a relationship with Christ.
Yes.
Would that sum it up for you?
My life is secure. You see, Jehovah's Witnesses have got no guarantees. Now, these people, my brothers and sisters, it breaks my heart. It really does. Because they drag themselves out. I mean, one of the most callous things I ever heard, some of these people are 80 and 90 years old, and they've all been pioneers in the past. And in those days, it was 100 hours a month. And you didn't have the transport in those days. You didn't have the kingdom halls like you've got them now in locations where they could be got to easily. And these people have worked and given a lifetime to God. And they get to a stage where they're riddled with arthritis or, they're not well. And so the only thing that the circuit overseer is concerned with is the percentage that are reporting. In other words... So
you have to put in your hours and what you do each month.
Once a month.
Yes.
And that's all he's concerned with is the percentage of active, inactive. That's all he's worried about. And there's one in between. But the older people, to see them try and get an hour in and then go and suffer in agony for the next 2 days for that, it's pitiful. So what they did, they brought in a new time slot of a quarter of an hour. Well, it don't make any difference whether it's a quarter of an hour or 6 weeks. For this person to get out of the house is a major effort. But we love you so much. Just put a quarter of an hour a month in, and you're still a reporter. And it's only for the CO to say, when he gets back to Bethel, we got 80% report in there, that's all right. Because it's like a sales organisation. That's all they're concerned with. And once you become a witness, you're in the bag, that's okay, you're dealt with. Now you get with the program and get a few more in because we got you now.
So it's outward, but
yeah,
this life, and interesting. Let me just bring it because a couple of times you mentioned it, and some of our viewers may have picked it up.
Yeah.
Twice you've talked about being thrown off the ark.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm presuming now that you are referring to an article that the Watchtower wrote where they liken the organisation to Noah's Ark.
Absolutely.
And you were either in the ark or you weren't. Is that what you were referring to?
That's correct. They refer to themselves as the modern ark because you see the original ark found its way through water. The modern ark will find its way through fire.
Right.
So, but that's what they refer it to. And you see, they use the scripture in Matthew 24, where Jesus says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man when he returns." So they draw the ark allusion there. And basically, if someone had got thrown off the ark, they would have drowned.
Yeah.
But the ark is God's organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, God's organization, the only true religion, the only people the Bible belonged to. Everybody outside of that is Gog's crowd and God's enemy. Gog's crowd and God's enemy will die in an instant of time, and you'll be carried through under the safety of the ark of Jehovah's Witnesses. Yeah.
I guess there are many still in the organisation that are relying on that. I mean, and they, whether they see some of the problems and some of the difficulties and just try and put them down, or whether they don't see, maybe they see totally that this is God's organisation.
Yeah.
I mean, we had an email that I talked about in our last programme that dealt with that, of somebody that saw the change that took place in somebody's life. Now, we've got that, and that's how they see. Have you tried going back to some, and even in your disfellowship state, in that sense that they treat you the same?
Yeah.
Has anybody listened to you, or do they just feel you are now of the devil and they don't want to even listen to you?
The initial response to me was the standard response that I'm an apostate, I'm an enemy of God's organisation, anything I got to say is twisted and bitter, and not to be listened to. So for the first, I would say 6 months, that would have been the case. But one of the things that they say is, outside of God's organisation that the faithful slave delivers the spiritual food to, which is the governing body, it is a spiritual desert. So anybody that is outside of God's organisation will shrivel spiritually very quickly. I haven't shriveled 1 inch.
Yeah.
I've grown in spirituality like nobody's business.
Because we dealt with that in detail earlier on in the year. I mean, it's terrific, isn't it?
Yeah. So that causes them a problem, because they're not talking to me, but how on earth can I tell them Bible passages when I haven't got God's Spirit to even know it anymore?
That's how they see it, yeah.
I haven't got God's Spirit. I mean, Satan wouldn't know those things. And how can I be flourishing? And I mean, people say to me, "You look so healthy, Dave. You know, your eyes shining. Your hair still don't grow, but that don't matter." But, I'd become a shriveled up wreck. I was mentally and physically and spiritually like a raisin. I was absolutely sucked dry. I had nowhere to go with it. Well, look at me now. I couldn't even think of God. I couldn't talk of God. I didn't want anything to do with God. I mean, I said to Lynn, the witnesses don't believe that there's any existence after death. They call hell the common grave, Hades, Sheol in Hebrew. And their version of it is that if you don't survive through Armageddon, or you're not one of the anointed, and you don't get through the 1,000-year millennial reign, the second test, then it's okay, because you just face destruction. And I got to the point where that was the preferable option. Because if living with and for God was this, well, then I'd rather have not have been born, and I'd rather be destroyed. And that was where I was. And that was when I saw the video. I mean, God provides. I mean, I was just going through the internet, and there it was.
Yeah, and it was one of our interviews, wasn't it,
you and Peter.
Yes.
And I thought to myself, I can't watch that. I can't watch it. Yeah. But I did. Then I thought to myself, I shouldn't have watched that. But I sent an email through to you, and I mean, I was in desperate straits. I really didn't know what to do. And I got to a point where, I mean, I think I said to you, I feel like I'm in hell. And thankfully, from there, I actually was able to see, I was being accused by the Bible, by these people. But now I'm being enlivened by the Bible, by Christianity.
Yeah. It seems, and I guess this would not just be Jehovah's Witnesses. I guess some Christians do it like this as well.
Yeah.
That we so criticize people.
Yeah.
We so judge people in the sense of condemnation. Now, it seems to me more and more, and I find God really does speak to me more about this in these days. The way we treat one another is so important. And what God wants is just, even if somebody's wrong, even if somebody's make mistakes, what he wants us to do is to reach out to them, to encourage them, to lift them up. Yeah, there may come a time where we've got to say, it's impossible, we can't do it.
Too far.
But until that time, we've got to,
it's an obligation.
And that's the attitude. Did you find anybody in the leadership of the Watchtower Society, were there individuals, surely there must have been, that had got through to that position rather than just wanting to bring you to task and say this is wrong and heap coals of fire on your head? They wanted you to survive. They wanted you to come through. Did you not find anybody like that?
I've got two friends that I would say that are elders. I won't mention their names, because I honestly believe that a lot of people that are trapped within the Watchtower are Christian at heart, that follow Christian principles, that have surrendered their life to Jesus, but because of family reasons or because of other reasons, they don't let on about it because the cost would be too high. And I would say, yes, that there were 2, possibly 3 brothers that cried with me and Lynn. But on a body of 9, 10 elders, they get voted down. And then they'll get reproved themselves, you see. It's a nightmare. It's so difficult because you feel, to try and get some help, you're putting them on the spot.
Yes.
And to be honest, you don't want to. You know, I didn't ever want to get anybody in trouble because of thinking like them. But I can tell the ones. I mean, I can think back now, and some of the advice was given to me, because you see, when you're a witness, you must attend all these meetings. You must show up for ministry once a week, and you must be doing all this reading. And there are people that have said to me, and these are the people that I'm referring to, that say, look, Dave, just turn up to one meeting a month, just show your face. Just put an hour in, keep them quiet, you know. And you can see that I can read the code now that I couldn't read then.
Yes.
Because I had no understanding of what I've read now. But a couple of times, one of them sat me down and read me a passage of scripture, and I thought, he's got it backwards. But now what I can see is he wasn't telling me to do things a certain way, but he was trying. I'm a dopey Bristolian. I don't cotton on. It's murder.
Anybody from Bristol, please forgive him. He's only talking about himself, not everybody else.
I mean, the missus chased me round for 6 years before I realised she was after me. Terrible. She let me tyres down and caught up with me, but there you are. Another story. But no, I mean, I just didn't. I can hear him laughing. I didn't cotton on to what he was saying, but I can see it now.
Yeah.
And I know that I'll meet those brothers in heaven. But when push comes to shove, the body of elders will make a decision on the basis of the cleanliness of the congregation, you see. And there's no carpet to lift. It's got to be removed.
I mean, we began this program with this illustration of the road. Of A, we've got to know where we're going before we know which road we take, and B, we've got to take the right road, otherwise we won't get there. You obviously discovered that what you wanted was a relationship with the person of Jesus Christ. You wanted security. You wanted to be at rest, as it were, in your faith in the Lord. Did you feel that somewhere along the line what the Watchtower was doing had moved onto a different road and you were going to miss that, which is why you had to change?
Well, I think in the past I've said that I was a Christian from a young age, and it was circumstances in my life that led me to answering the door in the first place, and vulnerability at the time, and actually, and I blame the church that I was part of for it. Witnesses came and were there for me because they were trying to recruit me. The church wasn't. And I found myself forcing myself to crush the fears that I had. Took 7 years. And a real panic attack, because I thought I thought I knew the date of Armageddon.
Right.
And I thought, I've got to get in, I've got to get Lynn in, I've got to get my family in, because I thought that the big shindig of the 2000, the big century turnover, was exactly the same as Belshazzar's feast. And I thought, God's going to have them. They're going to be celebrating, and he's just going to go, thank you very much, and clear the lot off. And I really, really thought that. And on January the 2nd, 2000, I was highly disappointed. But I'm stuck with it. Right. So, I mean, I tried to make the best of it. But I became more and more hollow, because I became more and more directed away from Jesus. There's this nebulous Jehovah that you can't even imagine. What is Jehovah? You know, I don't know. It's like having a relationship with the air in this room. How do you do that? You know, it's impossible. But Jesus, no, he's just there to verify prayer. I mean, all they really say is that a prayer won't be answered unless it's asked in the name of Jesus Christ, and that's it. And he's a side issue. So what the stuff I'd understood previously, I'm being taken further and further away from it. And I was just becoming more and more spiritually hollow. I had nothing left spiritually. So a point does come where you do start to take things in context and start to find that this really isn't the way. This is all wrong. And then you see all the spite and the venom flying around the place, and you try to stay away from it, and then it's turned on you. Right. And you think to yourself, well, what am I supposed to have done wrong here? Because, I mean, if they're coming for you, if they decide you're getting it no matter what you've done, and there's no way you're getting out of it. And when I was confronted by this presiding overseer, he said, well, you're the only candidate, mate. Well, what are you going to say that I've done then? Well, we're going to have to agree that, but it's going to have to be something trivial, because we're going to need you back in quick. You're going to be off as a servant for 3 years, and we don't really want it to go on any longer than that. And really, we want you to be reaching out for an elder as soon as possible. But we have had this little hiccup, Dave.
I mean, that, you know, the people out there that say, come on, Dave, are you really wanting to? Seriously, that what one of the leadership of the organisation said was, you've got to disfellowship somebody. You know, I mean, it sounds almost cloud cuckoo land. It is cloud cuckoo land unless you're in there and you're suffering under it. Yeah. It is unbelievable. And I mean, when you talk about, I mean, I had someone, I think Nick, got particularly upset because I mentioned the amount of mental illness that's involved within these congregations. And you see people are so crushed and so psychotic, it's beyond belief. What I say, an ordinary person would say, the bloke is crackers. I don't believe a word of it. This cannot be true. And I empathise. I don't sympathise, but I empathise with that view, because they've never been in the position that I've been in. And only as you've been there and felt the pressure, do you understand it? Do you understand it? Yeah. Since you've left, have any others left? Have you been able to see the Lord as you know him now working in their lives? As others come to that same conclusion that, yeah, this isn't the road for me. This isn't the one that's leading. It's not leading to where I want to be. Have you seen that? Yes. I mean, but I've not seen anybody leave, but I've seen people put in severe difficulty because of seeing me the way I am. Right. People that expected me to disappear off of the scene and become a shambling wreck, they can't work out what on earth is going on with Dave Brown. Yeah. Everything that we've been told had happened to that man, totally the reverse is occurring. And you can't say he's an apostate because he'll talk to us from the scripture. And you can't say that he's horrible because, I mean, I'm not horrible. I'm very strong in my opinions. Yes. And I'm very strong at resisting. I mean, they do still try to control me. I do still get the occasional little dig. You know, I mean, I had a letter. It was quite remarkable, actually. If you carry on in this vein, Brother Brown, yeah. When you come to reapplying to come back in the congregation, all these matters will have to be dealt with then. Well, what planet are these people on? Right. Because I've got no intention. I resigned and I got no intention of applying back. And it's as if, but you see, they've got to, but that wasn't for my benefit. I know that. That was for the benefit of the congregation saying, well, look, we're doing all we can to get him back. So that was what that was about, nothing to do with me. But I'm sure the people that wrote it thought, well, okay, we'll get him to grovel. You know, and he can crawl over 4 miles of broken glass rather than the average half a mile. But, you know, let him stay out for another 2 years because they control that.
And there we are. But yeah, weirdest situation.
So how have you and Lynn really coped with this? Because you've come out and you've come to know the Lord, which obviously He's helped you tremendously. But you've still got the pressures. You've talked about the pressures of family. You've talked about the pressure of people that don't want you saying what you're saying and doing what you're doing. You've talked about the pressure put on your son, etc. How have you coped with that? And maybe there are other people out there that are in the same situation. They have left the Watchtower, or they become very disillusioned and that. Let's talk to them for just a minute. How have you coped, and how can you help them to communicate how to cope?
Well, I won't lie. It's extremely difficult because being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is your identity. It is your entire life. You abandon family and friends. You abandon work. You abandon everything. And once you come outside of a congregation, you've got nothing. If I hadn't have been supported by yourself and Reach Out Trust, then I would have been a very valuable atheist, I think. Because my experience of God was so appalling that I'd stop anybody even going into a church, I think.
So can I say, what you equated what the Watchtower Society did with you, with God doing it to you?
Yeah.
Was that because they had claimed to be speaking on behalf of God while you were in there? Is that how you saw it?
It's Jehovah, God's channel of communication, and the only one on the earth. I mean, they make it clear to you. I mean, I've spoken to an elder, and he said, "Excuse me, you're speaking to Jehovah through me. You know that, don't you? Jehovah's listening to this." You see, you don't deal. What men do is you get the actions of men that provide the pressure, but they'll never take responsibility. They just say, "Well, hang on a minute. You've just said that to Jehovah. That's gone to the throne room," And so when you're involved in this, you think, "Oh my word!" They just step out of the way. So yeah, it's.
So, I mean, have there been specific things that have come into your life, whether reading the Word, whether prayer, fellowship, whatever it is, that have really helped you cope? I mean, are there some very practical things you can share?
Well, yeah, the first thing that I found was very, very important to me was the Bible. I had been reading the Bible, I'd seen things in context, and I knew and was becoming more uneasy as a Jehovah's Witness and trying to relate there being the channel and then it's being twisted to what I can read in here. I was freed that I could read that. Actually getting in a reliable copy of that, because the Jehovah's Witness Bible, the New World Translation, is written to suit a dogma, and the people that are behind that will answer to God for that, because they've inserted words, they've taken words out, and they've reduced Jesus Christ, their Creator and God, and part of the Trinity, part of God with the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. They've reduced him to a created angel. And they'll answer for that. But I was able then, with contacting you, and that was a spirit help. That was God did that, for you to say to me, well, look at these scriptures in context, prayer to the Holy Spirit, and using God's word to decipher God's word, not listening to men. Clearly, I listen and read certain publications, and I'll read a broad span, not a narrow dogma. Right. And then the Spirit will guide me, because when I pray and ask for wisdom and revelation and these type of things, then I can go to this and the Spirit will teach me God's word, because now God's talking to me. And the beauty of it is that's my love letter from my Father, who's brokenhearted over my situation, but he's done everything for me to win me back. And that's for me, and it's not anything to do with W.H. Smith or any other similar type of organisation that might speak on my behalf. My Father sent that to me. And my Father says to me, listen, relax, calm down. I've done it all. You're okay, be calm. Learn, because it's not what you do, it's what you are. Fantastic.
So you talk about people that understand and can support you.
Yes.
Not just telling you what to do, but encouraging you to find out for yourself.
Yes.
leading you through to real scriptural Bible study,
Yes.
to understand maybe some of the things that you've misunderstood
Absolutely.
over the years. Maybe you've got to unlearn things before you learn them.
Yeah.
And then prayer, you've mentioned as
Oh,
well.
very,
Very,
very important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's marvelous. You know, this it's a release. I mean, I laugh.
Yeah.
It's 25 sacks of coal went off my back the day
Yeah.
I walked out of there.
Yeah.
And I can talk to Jesus Christ, and I know that he's always been listening.
Yeah.
But now I know he's listening.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid anymore. All this fear's gone. I can breathe. Oh, dear, what a different life.
Dave, let me just say a couple of, I may get back to you for a final word. I may not. We'll just see how long I chat, you know. You could talk, I could talk.
Yeah.
So we've had a great chat, and thank you for that, Dave. But I want to say again, all sincerity, if you are a Jehovah's Witness, if you feel that in any way we have misrepresented you, Dave's been sharing his understanding, what's happened to him. If you feel there's anything there, then a couple of ways. One, get onto the Revelation TV website, find Simply the Truth page. There are the details, but also you will find a link from the front page that leave a message. We will put it up. We will answer it. So ways of communication there. And once again, please, I make the offer as I've made many times before. There's an empty chair at this table, at this desk, and we'd love you. There we are, right in the middle. Boom, right there. We'd love you to come along and to share. And, for your experience where you are, we won't set you up. We will agree what you're doing. So if you're able to do that, come along. In the meantime, for those of you regular watchers even, not the watches, but the watchers of Genesis TV, we're here every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Tune in next week. Ensure that you set your, that you can sit, you can take these things. Do we make you listen to them? No, but take them, listen to them. If you're a Jehovah's Witness and you've listened today, please think these things through. If you're somebody that you're not sure, think these things through and see how we're doing. 30 seconds, Dave. What would you really just like to leave with the viewers today?
I would just like to say to my brothers and sisters within the organisation that's controlled by this governing body, this faithful and discreet slave, please, please pick the Bible up and talk to Jesus on your own terms. He's waiting to hear from you. Look what he's done for me.
Great. Dave, bless you for being here. Thank you very much. Bless you for being there. The Lord really be with you, lead you into all truth, and we'll see you again the next time. Bye for now.